A cornichon is one of those little pickles. They're tart, briny, extra sour. As the name entails, very French. Usually these little cornichon pickles are served with pâté, charcuterie. And in French slang, a cornichon is a simpleton, is an idiot, is a moron. And I love this word because it's so descriptive. And a friend of mine recently described me as a cornichon. And I love it because in so many ways, it's so descriptive. Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bloviating Podcast. I am your bald, bloviating cornichon. And I'd like to talk about exactly that. How we are perceived by friends, family, colleagues, online, offline. Her cornichon comment, cornichon, was accurate, I think. And I don't think her intent was to insult me at all. It was very, very descriptive and it was very contextual as we were having a back and forth conversation about, of all things, the impact of artificial intelligence on advertising, marketing, PR. We both work in the racket. We've been involved on the digital side of the house for pretty much all of our careers. And no revolution is a bigger revolution than the AI revolution when it comes to identifying target audiences and priming content to be most suitable for expanding reach and engagement. And classical algorithms and models, everything from programmatic banner advertising on Google to targeted advertising on Facebook based on your prior internet searches and queries, has all been getting better and better, or at least trying, at personalizing these connection points between content and consumer. And as we were going back and forth, my friend was wondering about the impact of AI, at least short to medium term, when it came to behavioral mapping and other specificities around this evolution. And I wrote her back. Instead of just texting, I left her a voice message, as I like to do, just because they're more personal. I type all day as a writer, and I like to talk, as you could probably tell on these podcasts. So I left her an audio text message. And I just ripped right into it. I said, don't overthink it. Look at the bigger picture. AI is wonderful. Machine learning aspect of AI, the training models are excellent at slicing and dicing content, then putting it back together to make it optimal for people who are doing the query, who are launching the prompt, who are interested in a particular product, service, piece of content. So long story longer, I said, look at the bigger picture. Don't get distracted by the details. And we will soon enter an age that I talk at length about in some of my other podcasts, namely the Wall series, how we've got so much content out there, most of it fragmented, most of it not really connecting to its intended audience. We have an entire industry, namely the marketing, advertising, PR industry, wherein we work, that's been struggling for decades to just bridge this gap between product, services, content that companies, individuals are making available and their intended audiences. And I firmly believe, medium to long term, that one of the greatest strengths of AI will be connecting content, product, services with the people who most want to engage with that content, product, service. AI will be the great connector. It'll identify based on your profile, based on your preferences, what you like. And slicing it, dicing it into what we call the long tail, it'll connect you with content, products, and services that up to now have been opaque, or the companies and individuals creating this have had to pay big bucks to somehow enable you to experience this, at least see it, interact with it. And the matching is imperfect. It's still pretty bad, but AI is going to asymptotically get closer and closer to that perfect place where I get the content that is best for me. And that'll be great for the companies and products and services and influencers. So they could concentrate on making good products and services, and influencers could carry on the way they naturally carry on without having to cater to some mental concept of an audience. And it should just kind of happen. And then she asked about monetization, and I said it'll probably be expensive. The AI bubble, keeping it from bursting, people are going to have to pay for this. But as an influencer, I'd pay for it if I knew it worked. And companies with money, services, will pay the big AI companies after it shakes and bakes, the few remaining ones, to make these connections. But here's why I go on about this. I said it in a way that was like a cornichon, that was tart, briny. I was that annoying little pickle in her world that morning. Instead of being validating and empathetic, I just barfed out my opinion. And then I checked myself. I wrote her after I ranted that, oh my God, I'm so patronizing and condescending in my tone because I listened to myself bloviate at her. And then she was very sympathetic and wrote back that, yeah, well, you're cornichon. People like you. You're a very likable guy, but you're like those little pickles. You're tart, you're sharp. You accentuate the meal, so to speak, but in and of themselves can be pretty harsh, annoying. And that's my nature. And maybe a little bit of validation, a little bit more empathy could go a long way. But, don't ever change. That's who you are. And that got me thinking. Thus, my bloviation now about the persona that I have with friends, family, colleagues, and online. Now, much has been said about the difficulty of earned media in 2025, that you could be Einstein or Picasso, Leonardo, and no one will care because you're lost in almost 500 billion gigabytes of digital streaming content effervescing across everyone's phones and devices each and every day. So unless you pay big bucks to get noticed, it's hard to cut through. And many people do cut through, but it takes time and persistence and a certain amount of luck. And I respect that, and I agree with that. But the point I'm making in this rant is to look in the mirror and turn it around. So specifically, I have been ranting on TikTok, let's say, since late 2024. So it's been about 8 months, and I've got probably 1,000 videos of me expressing my opinion in my kitchen, selfie videos, most of them. And I've had a few viral sensations, but for the most part, I've been pretty much flowing underneath the radar. And I could blame the algorithms for this, and I could state proudly that I've never paid for any engagement. But that begs the question of me organically building a following, like many influencers frankly have, based on the stickiness of my own content. And here, if I fess up to being a cornichon, I could look at this in two ways. The one way is being briny and tart and sour in and of itself, without the charcuterie, if you will, the cheese plate, can come across as a little too much. And similarly, when I look at my career, that cornichon tendency that I have had has been brought up to me, and I've been reminded of it, and it's been mirrored, and I've just more or less dealt with it as everyone has dealt with it on the receiving end. Now, it takes a village, and everyone's got their own style. And one aspect of my personality, which I think is my biggest strength, but also my biggest weakness, is I don't flex very well to accommodate. I am empathetic and sensitive in terms of sensing how other people respond. But if I think I'm right, and if there's an urgency within the moment to express oneself and move on with a project, with a partnership, then I'll be the first one to go full cornichon, be briny, be tart, be sour. Just let it out there. And I tend to steamroll people. They're not comfortable. I might be fun to hang out with, but I built enemies. Enemies who are not only colleagues, but family, friends. So the world is, in a sense, a mirror. It's unfair in many ways, and it's not a level playing field. But you give what you get what you give. And whether or not you're paying for engagement online, things catch or they don't. And after a while of not catching or catching in isolated instances, then it behooves the influencer to evaluate their content, their attitude, their cornichonness, and see if it's working for them. And here I arrive at the other kind of conclusion, which is persistence and individuality and just doing your own thing. So we create our world as we go through it. This is expressed in everything from the mathematics and modeling of quantum mechanics, Schrodinger's cat being alive and dead, the observer influencing and transforming and maybe even creating the observed, all the way to personal and collective psychology. My younger son the other day, who started dating a lovely young woman, he is 19, told me that ever since he's been dating, he's getting attention from other young women in ways he wasn't before. And I noted that it's probably no accident, and it's basically a consequence of his own confidence being even unconsciously built up. And people sense when you are in a particular internal state, and it's externalized in countless ways, most of them unconscious. And just like I was mentioning, the AI future connecting content, product, services with their audiences, we as humans connect better with our social circles under certain conditions. And the AI in this case is his new girlfriend, who bolstered his own internal confidence and feeling of being wanted. And that in turn had its external expression in ways he wasn't even aware of. And his world became a reflection of that. And that once again proves that how one is how one is perceived, is how one is doing, where inner and outer states merge. Perception becomes reality, reality, perception. And the universe abides. The universe is telling us, based on how well we're doing in it or not, as to our own internal attitude and state. Now, the converse is, of course, also true. You can walk out of your apartment and a piano can fall on your head from the second floor, and it's not your fault. And bad things do happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. And everything does not always happen for a reason. So this could get carried away in the other extreme. But it behooves us to recognize that a big percentage of our level of engagement and our success with engagement with other people in this world is contingent on our own attitude, our own style, our own internal state. And this reflects back to me as a cornichon. Now, do I feel like tweaking my attitude? Do I feel like tweaking my social media content, my writing, my books to better accommodate a wider audience, to accelerate what is either an inevitable crescendo of expanding reach and engagement, or is a delimiting a self-limiting ceiling of engagement that's created by my own cornichonness? And I think even that has to strike a balance. And I find this all very, very interesting. I love self-reflection. But after I process this, and of course I'm not done with the exercise, I will no doubt fall back on my baseline, my lowest energy state, if you will, going back to quantum mechanics, of my mookiness. And I am very much a cornichon. And that's how I'm built. That's how I'm wired. And that's most significantly how I like to be. And I'm more than willing to sacrifice the potential for broader reach and engagement, even monetization, for the luxuriousness of being able to express myself in the style and in the way I want. Do we need to keep working on ourselves? That is the current fetish, and has been for a while, the self-help, the life coach, the guru, where you're always working on yourself. You can always improve yourself. We're all overcoming our childhood traumas and we're becoming better people. And every day is this kind of boot camp of self-realization and self-actualization. Now, part of me agrees and a part of me just calls bullshit on that. And this reaches a crescendo when we get to a certain age too, which is when we settle into who we really are. Aristotle said that a stone becomes more stone-like with time, that a tiger is more tiger-like with time. And that's very metaphysical, and it doesn't really mean anything in the real world. But it's taken better to me as a metaphor for our own lives, that you reach a certain critical mass, if you will, of your own personality, your own behaviors. And I might sound like an old fuddy-duddy guy throwing in the towel on any kind of personal growth, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you reach a point, especially if you've reached a high point of happiness, self-actualization, and overall happiness, where being who you are is A-okay, where your goals aren't to be Mr. or Ms. Popular, but simply to do what you like to do. And if you've got a baseline minimum of friends, family, colleagues, and you feel good with that, and you've got 15,000 followers on TikTok and not 150,000 or 1,000,000, and that's okay too, then just keep doing what you're doing. How often do we find people with irascible personalities, vile personalities, who do very, very well for themselves? And all that begs the question of the William Goldman observation of Hollywood that nobody knows anything. So you could try to engineer your personality for broader reach and engagement. You could work hard each and every day to work on yourself, to improve yourself, to become someone ostensibly you are not now, who is a new and improved version of yourself. But I do have to ask myself the motivation of this exercise and whether or not simply just living your life being you with all of your faults, all of your cornichonness is just fine and a-okay. And I'll take it even further and stress the opportunity costs of spending so much time and effort to air quote work on yourself when you could just spend that time being yourself, doing what you do. And whether or not you make it or accomplish your ad hoc or arbitrary metrics of what constitutes success or failure, and then you could very well have a great life. No one makes everybody happy. Those who try usually end up pissing everyone off. And there's certain contradictions and paradoxes when it comes to human behavior where sometimes the biggest jerk could display the kindest tendencies, and the ones who are most giving and conciliatory have within them the deepest narcissism and selfishness. So, who am I to say, what do I really know, except for all of this triggering this very interesting conversation as to what constitutes ultimately living the good life as either a giver or a receiver of communication. And to me, after I process all of it, perhaps because I fall more in the introverted side of the Jungian psychological type, I might come across as extroverted just because I love bloviating so much. But I think ultimately my values, my personality are more introverted in the sense that my own sense of self and my own standards dictate far more what I do and how I do it than an externalized appraisal designed to get people to like me. And this goes back to my friend's observation that I'm a cornichon, and on the palate, if you will, on the menu, the cornichon has its own place. And a great cornichon is tart and briny and accentuates all the other lovely flavors, many of which are sweet and softer. But it's a yin yang kind of thing. And that's one of the beauties of points of view and perspective and the raw subjectivity of the human condition. It harks of Nietzsche's beyond good and evil kind of assertion that true art is that meld of what he called the Apollonian and the Dionysian, the light and the dark, the mind and the heart, the thought and the passion. And within that broad range of these two vectors spinning around, you've got cornichons and you've got pâtés and you've got fromage and you've got, mortadella, and you've got all of these combinations that are not even only French, but Italian, and they're all yummy in their own way, and they're even yummier in combination. So my overall conclusion to this is I'm just going to keep cornichoning, and I feel pretty good. And if there's any kind of wall or blockage to me potentially monetizing all my rants in a more successful capacity, or expanding reach and engagement to the point where I could really just podcast all day long and not have a worry, then so be it. And if I don't, or I can't, whether it is really a crapshoot of the algorithms or whether it really is me self-limiting, delimiting myself, it doesn't really matter because I'm having a great time. I'm transparent. I'm open. This is me, baby. And rather than spend a lot of time and effort designing and re-engineering myself to accommodate some audience I don't know, I don't understand, and don't even interact with, it's coming from the heart, baby. And it's tart and it's briny and it tastes good to me. And the chances are high that if it tastes good to me, it'll taste good to somebody else. I had a contrarian view. I posted a reel not too long ago on TikTok, and I had a comment from someone which really nails a lot of this home. And he didn't have anything to say about the content of what I was saying about some political thing one way or another. But he said, and there was another one or a couple other commenters who liked this guy's comment. He said, I couldn't even get to your point because your delivery bothered me so much. And I've had similar comments, not a flurry of them, but enough to express what I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, that a lot of people don't like my delivery. A lot of people are taken aback. They feel steamrolled or insulted or talked down to. My tone can be patronizing and condescending. Rather than butter people up at first, I just hit them with my best shot. And I've done this in my career to the betterment of my career, but I think to a large extent to its detriment. And I look back, frankly, with no regrets. And I look forward to more cornichoning the hell out of the internet and the people I know, and take me or leave me. Because when you turn on your TV, you can get a Seinfeld, or you can get a Kramer, or you can get an Elaine. You have all of these personalities. And the more sharply defined the personality, the more briny the cornichon and the more fromagey the cheese, the more people tend to like that. So if you like tart, and if you like brine, and if you like an acerbic kind of wit and humor and attitude and directness, then you'll like me. And after that guy left me that comment that he couldn't even listen to what I was saying because of my tone, I went to his profile, and he doesn't post any of his own videos. He just reposts the videos of others. So I checked out the reposted reels, and the ones who did the first person style rant, similar to mine, were all very soft, and they spoke slowly. And they came across to me as a bunch of whiny wimps. So there you have it. One man's meat is another man's cornichon. And that's how it always is. And the last part of this rant is I am confident, not in a predictive kind of way, but just in an effervescent and effusive kind of way, that if I just keep cornichoning without having to adjust too much to other people's opinion about my brininess, then something's going to snap. I'll reach that tipping point. And I don't know what that tipping point is, how you'd qualify it, when it'll happen. But it's really just a matter of persistence, staking your own claim, doing your own thing, and having fun with it. And with that attitude comes a kind of sincerity and earnestness that I think people respond to and react to in their own way. And I see other influencers in other categories. There's a very popular author who does little critiques of science fiction, of literature, of TVs and movies. And the videos are kind of sloppily done, but sloppily done video, especially on TikTok, is its own kind of style. And he'll have crosscuts to scenes from movies and pages from books. And he's got his little cutout silhouette at the bottom. And instead of even filling the bottom with his whole silhouette, it's just kind of awkwardly squared off and he's kind of floating on the screen. And he's very, very popular. This guy, I'm sure, makes his living from TikTok alone. He's got sometimes thousands of comments, tens of thousands of likes on virtually every video. He's got millions of followers, tens of millions of likes and engagements, and more power to him. I think it's great. And this writer was referred to me by a friend of mine who really likes him. And it was in reference to social media and engagement. And I think my friend was trying to tell me something. He was giving me a hint. He goes, this writer I like a lot. And he does this, this, and this. And nudge, nudge, wink, wink. He's empathetic. He comes across softer. He handles topics in a warm and friendly way. So I went there and I watched him and I saw several of his reels. And I see what he's doing, and he's very good at it. But it made me want to puke, to be honest. If a check rolled in for $50,000 a month for me to mimic what this guy does, I wouldn't do it because it's not me. It makes me puke. Other people love the guy. And why do I have such a reaction? Because again, he comes across as soft and wimpy. One specific example, he was talking about the stormtroopers in Star Wars. How many would there have to be for the Empire to rule the galaxy? Okay, this is the shit that this guy talks about. And it's fun. I love science fiction. I just published a science fiction book. I love the genre and I love Star Wars. So without talking about the difficulties of relativistic time dilation and the fact that the galaxy is more than 100,000 light years across, well, of course, there's warp drive and hyperspace, right? But the whole idea is absurd to begin with. And then he was likening, as an example, the number of human troops that were sent to war, and to quote him, in a big battle that happened in World War II between these two armies. That's how he referred to this example. Now, this guy is milquetoast, and he's going for the broadest reach. He is sensitive to the sensitivities of the general audience to appease them, to get likes. And this guy, I'm sure, is as soft naturally as I'm briny. I don't think he's exuding much effort to do this. It's how it comes naturally for him. But what he was getting at was Operation Barbarossa, which was the biggest conflagration in human history to date, when Nazi Germany invaded Stalin's Russia in June of 1941, right? It was 41, 42. So instead of saying Nazi Germany, woo, and triggering anybody, or saying a battle between Germany and Russia, he said these two armies. And then he had a screenshot of a Wikipedia article with statistics. Now, why am I going in depth about this BS here? Well, because I think the guy's a wimp. And it's devoid of any impact or substance. And if you're dancing around your own example of military deployment because you don't want to upset people by saying Nazi Germany or Stalin's Russia, then it's laughable to me. But I'm the one with only a few hundred views, and he's the one with tens of thousands. So it begs the question of whose approach is more effective. And I don't know how long he's been on social media, but I would venture to assume that even without paid advertising in 8 months of posts, he's been way more successful than I have. But I hate it. It sucks, and I'm not going to do it. And conversely, I'm happy and I'll keep doing and evolving what I want to do. And you see, I'm even a Cornichon when I'm talking about my own Cornichon stuff. And it feels right. It feels good. And that to me is the bottom line of doing any of this. If you enjoy what you do and it comes across naturally and your own bottom line level of happiness is up there, then don't change, baby. Just be yourself. Be a Kramer, be a Seinfeld, be a George, be an Elaine. The world is a circus. It takes a village. Life is unfair. It often doesn't make sense. And most people, like William Goldman said about Hollywood, don't know nothing about nothing. Who knows what works and what doesn't? But if you just keep doing what you're doing, whether you're a gherkin or whether you're a T-bone steak, sooner or later, something is going to pop. And maybe the whole show will collapse into that Wonderland House of Cards, or you'll break free and be able to enlighten and please or annoy even more people than you ever thought you would. So there you have it, from your friendly neighborhood, your briny neighborhood Cornichon. Thanks for listening. I appreciate the opportunity to just Cornichon like this. And I want to thank my friend for coining me as a Cornichon, because it's always good to have a French insult in one's life and to kind of give oneself that moniker and to wear it with pride and more briny little pickle gherkinness and cornichonity to come. Thanks for listening.